guys, it's Britt. Tonight we're here to talk about Gypsy Rose being released from prison, and I had quite a few thoughts, so I'm going to talk to y'all about it and we can maybe have a conversation. If you're interested, please keep watching. All right, you guys, so the case of Gypsy Rose, I'm going to give you just a really brief skeletal breakdown of what happened, just in case you don't know who she is. I think that most of you will know exactly who she is and probably know a lot about the case as well. Gypsy Rose's case was one of the first in recent history that I watched. My jaw was on the floor and I immediately went into the biggest rabbit hole to try to read and watch and learn as much as I could about this case, just because I was so shocked by all of the information that was in this documentary. And if you all are wondering, the documentary that put me onto Gypsy Rose, it is Mommy, Dad, and Dearest. And I know that there's also a fictional series called The Act, but when I can, I like to stick to documentaries and things that focus on the actual people involved and not characters. That's just personal preference. Not saying that has to be that way for everyone, but I really was just enthralled with everything that happened in this situation. Obviously, the way that it ended was shocking, but even the things that led up to this point, Gypsy Rose is the reason that a lot of people started to learn about Munchausen by proxy. A lot of people didn't know what that term was or didn't really understand the complexity of it. And this is the case that put a lot of people into that, like, what is this? And what on earth, like, who knew this was even a thing? It's really tragic for the kids or people that are impacted by somebody who has this, and just the pain and suffering that some people go through. It's awful. Before we get into how I feel about her being in prison and being released from prison and her term, let's give you a really quick rundown of what happened. I'm going to refer to this article. I will link it down below. Gypsy Rose Blanchard grew up with her mother, Dee Dee, making claims about her health that resulted in a series of dire diagnoses and medical interventions. However, Gypsy wasn't actually unwell. Her mother had been lying about her symptoms. Experts believe Dee Dee's behavior stemmed from the mental disorder Munchausen syndrome by proxy. Because Dee Dee wanted to be a caretaker, she feigned and induced illness on her daughter. The truth about Gypsy and her mother only came out after Gypsy arranged for an online boyfriend to murder Dee Dee in 2015. Gypsy Rose, who was born in 1991, was a baby when Dee Dee claimed her daughter had sleep apnea. When Gypsy was 8 years old, Dee Dee described her as suffering from leukemia and muscular dystrophy and said she required a wheelchair and a feeding tube. The list of medical problems that Dee Dee related about her daughter would go on to include seizures, asthma, and hearing and visual impairments. Due to Dee Dee's actions, Gypsy was prescribed a litany of medications and had to sleep using a breathing machine. She also went through multiple surgeries, including procedures on her eyes and the removal of her salivary glands. When Gypsy's teeth rotted, perhaps due to her medications, missing salivary glands or neglect, they were pulled out. Yet the truth was, Gypsy could walk, didn't need a feeding tube, and didn't have cancer. Her head was bald only because her mother shaved off her head. Experts believe Dee Dee had a mental illness known as Munchausen syndrome by proxy, which made her fabricate her daughter's ill health in order to receive attention and sympathy for taking care of a sick child. How? I know that it's a mental disorder, but to keep up this thing for as long as she did and to receive all of these donations, like Habitat for Humanity literally built their home and gave them a car and gave them trips to Disney and all kinds of meet and greets. And it's just wild the amount of stuff that Dee Dee collected off of lies And that's not even covering the part of the negative health impacts that this has had on Gypsy, not only when it was happening, but also now. Obviously, some of these things are going to affect her for the rest of her life. And the mental and emotional torture that she went through at the hands of her mother is something that I can't even fathom. And I frankly don't understand. Like, I know it's a mental illness, but some things I just can't reconcile, even if I know it's a mental illness. Medical tests often showed inconclusive or contradictory results regarding Gypsy's diagnoses, but Dee Dee would stop seeing any doctors who questioned her daughter's ailments, so essentially doctor shopping until she got what she wanted. It continues and says, many caregivers went along with what Dee Dee wanted. She'd had some nurses training so she could accurately describe symptoms, and she sometimes gave Gypsy medication to mimic certain conditions. Dee Dee was also charming and seemed devoted to her daughter. When Gypsy was old enough to talk, Dee Dee instructed her to not volunteer information during their appointments. She was always the one relating Gypsy's fake medical history. So sad. It also goes over her father, Rod, and how Dee Dee was, orchestrating, telling him all about these health issues. He complimented Dee Dee for her devoted care. When some of Dee Dee's family noticed that Gypsy didn't really need the wheelchair and asked questions, Dee Dee and Gypsy moved away. So if things were not going her way and people were not on her agenda, then she would just relocate, even if it was family. Whether it was doctors, friends, family, if you were not buying what she was selling, then she would just take Gypsy and leave. Dee Dee claimed to be a victim of Hurricane Katrina, so she and Gypsy received assistance to relocate from Louisiana to Missouri in 2005. There, Dee Dee continued to bring Gypsy to doctor's appointments. Hurricane Katrina also provided an excuse for missing medical files. What an easy excuse. And to think of all the people who actually lost everything that they had, in the most tragic way in Hurricane Katrina. And then you have this one using it as a cop-out so that she can doctor shop and abuse her daughter. In 2008, Gypsy and Dee Dee moved into a new home in Springfield, Missouri, built by Habitat for Humanity. It was painted pink and had a wheelchair ramp. Gypsy and Dee Dee also received benefits that included charity-sponsored visits to concerts and Disney World. All along, Dee Dee continued to bask in the attention she received for being such a devoted caretaker. When Gypsy was 14, she saw a neurologist in Missouri who came to believe she was a of Munchausen syndrome by proxy. However, this doctor never reported her case to authorities. In later interviews, he stated his belief that there was not enough evidence to act. In 2009, an anonymous report was made to authorities stating that Dee Dee's accounts of Gypsy's ailments had no medical basis. This resulted in 2 caseworkers visiting their home, but Dee Dee convinced them that there was nothing wrong. And here's the thing, I get being charming and all, but how charming was she? I mean, it continues and says, as Gypsy grew older, Dee Dee began to lie about her age, going as far as to alter the dates on Gypsy's birth certificate to make her daughter seem younger. But Gypsy was becoming harder for Dee Dee to control. Now let's get into the crime, and hopefully this video is not too long for y'all, and if you know everything about this case, then you're probably just, having a snooze fest right now. But I do think that it's important to lay this out so that we can have a conversation about how much time she served and how I feel about her being released as of December 28th of 2023. So in 2011, Gypsy tried to get away from her mother by running away with a man she'd met at a science fiction convention, but Dee Dee soon tracked them down via mutual friends. She convinced the man that Gypsy was a minor, even though she was 19 at the time. According to Gypsy, Dee Dee smashed her computer and physically restrained her to her bed after they returned home. Gypsy had also stated her mother would sometimes hit her and deny her food. Gypsy eventually managed to get back online. She joined a Christian dating site where she met Nicholas Godejohn. She told him the truth about her mother's actions and ended up asking him to kill Dee Dee so they could be together. In June 2015, he came to her house and stabbed Dee Dee while Gypsy waited, ears covered, in the bathroom. Gypsy and Godejohn returned to his home in Wisconsin, where they were found by police. Gypsy had twice posted to the Facebook account she shared with her mother, once writing, "That is dead." She later explained that she made the post because she wanted her mother's body to be discovered. After Dee Dee's murder, many people who'd known Gypsy wondered why she had gone so far as to kill her. Since she could walk, she simply could have exposed Dee Dee's lies by standing up in public. Yet Gypsy had been conditioned to think no one would believe her. I mean, the brainwashing here is at an all-time high. It continues and says, she explained, "I couldn't just jump out of the wheelchair because I was afraid and I didn't know what my mother would do. I didn't have anyone to trust." The fact that Gypsy had spent her entire life being controlled and monitored by her mother, she wasn't allowed to go to school. Although Gypsy was of normal intelligence, Dee Dee told everyone her daughter had the mental age of a 7-year-old. When they were out in public, Dee Dee constantly held Gypsy's hand, squeezing it if she wanted her daughter to be quiet. Dr. Mark Feldman, an expert in Munchausen syndrome by proxy, said of Gypsy's life in action, "The control was total in the same sense that the control of a kidnapped victim sometimes is total. Her daughter was, in essence, a hostage." And I think we can understand the crime that occurred subsequently in terms of a hostage trying to gain escape. That's what I always kind of thought about this, was just that she felt like that was her only option. That was her only option to really escape and never be found by her mother again, is if her mother was no longer alive. It continues and says, now that she is out of prison, Gypsy is not happy that Dee Dee is dead. As Gypsy's medical records documented the abuse that she'd been subjected to, her lawyer was able to arrange a plea deal for the charges she faced in Dee Dee's death. In 2016, Gypsy pled guilty to second-degree murder. She was sentenced to 10 years in prison and served 85% of her sentence before being released on December 28, 2023. Godejohn was found guilty of first-degree murder 2018 and was sentenced to life in prison. Gypsy has stated that it was only after Dee Dee's death that she realized the extent of her mother's deception. While Gypsy had known she could walk and eat regular food, she had believed that she had leukemia. Today, Gypsy is healthy. She's also said she enjoyed more freedom in prison than the life that she shared with Dee Dee. However, when asked by Dr. Phil if she was glad her mother was dead, she stated, "I'm glad that I'm out of that situation, but I'm not happy she's dead." So as far as the sentence and the time that she served, a lot of people have said, well, she didn't serve enough time. She wasn't sentenced to enough time. She should have been in there longer. Some people are on the total opposite side and say that she shouldn't have done any prison time at all and just gone to some kind of like rehabilitation center to help her through her trauma and the grief and the just everything that Dee Dee put her through. I'm somewhere in the middle. Me personally, I think that she did serve enough time. In fact, I think that, you know, if she was released like 2 years ago, I would have had the same opinion, because I do think that anything over 5 years, you know, she's had enough time to think about it, and you don't want this girl who has already been manipulated and abused and, put through the ringer by Dee Dee. You don't want her to become so institutionalized that she is not able to live a normal life once she is released. I think she did good things while she was in prison. To me, based on the amount of, you know, interviews and stuff that I've seen, you know, I think that it's at a point now where it's good that she's being released. The only thing, her husband kind of gives me a little bit of a weird vibe. And I know that that's me judging and, you know, maybe even making an assumption. But for me, like, he married her a year ago. With him showing up with the camera crews and all of that kind of stuff, like, maybe Gypsy was aware that the camera crews were going to be there, so on and so forth. But, you know, they were followed to a shoe store, like she wanted to buy herself new shoes, and obviously like when she was still on prison property, they were getting all the photos and videos of that as well. And I just kind of feel like it's a lot to throw her into life healing, trying to, you know, plant her feet, trying to take care of her own mental health, trying to make sure that her physical health is good, trying to, you know, deal with being in the spotlight, all of this being front page news. Anyway, I just think that it's a lot to kind of expect her to juggle this and stay sane and try to rebuild her life and all of that. So I hope that she does really well in the free world. I really hope that she is surrounded by people who, you know, really understand the complexity of this situation. I hope that she has doctors and medical professionals, mental health people, just people that can help her through this chapter that she's embarking on. I, you know, send her all of the light and positivity for what it's worth, and she has so many people that are on her side. I think that she has served her time. I feel like she has learned her lesson, and I hope that she gets the peace and privacy that she's going to need during this new chapter. So anyway, tell me how you feel down below. I know that people are kind of all over the map with this topic, which is fine. For now, if you like the video, please leave a like and a comment. And if you'd like to see more from me in the future, please subscribe. I'll see you guys soon. Bye.